color this man father.
Color him father.
I think I'll color him love.
Color him love.
So today, I'm excited about the guest that we have today. It's original Seattleite, but left here a number of years ago. She comes back as an author, a writer, and I'm excited to introduce to you all Fashay Halley, who's a new author. She probably won't feel comfortable with me saying it, but she's a business mogul. So and her I'm really impressed because her new book is about fatherhood. It's called Intentional Dads, and I'm excited to have a conversation with her about her book, her new book, and hopefully you will enjoy it as well. So I'm gonna, Fashay, do you mind just introducing yourself and talking about your book?
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited just to get an opportunity to be connected and learn about your organization as well, because my whole inspiration around Intentional Dads is all about the gratitude I feel for men that decide to invest in the lives of children. And so Intentional Dads was deliberate because first, the I and the D for me is about identity. And so I called that out by coloring that I and D differently on the cover of my book, because I believe that our foundational identity is connected to our fathers.
That's
and
unique.
So
that's unique.
I don't know who my biological father is. I still don't. And my mother doesn't either, unfortunately, but she's passed 10 years ago. But if she could connect the dots, she would, but she could not. So, and
now let me get that right. So your mother passed on?
She has.
Okay.
She's also from Seattle, and so all of our family's from Seattle. And so she just didn't, because of the trauma in her life and how she grew up, it put her on a path. She was in the CPS foster care system as well, and so she had a different story. She was pregnant with my brother when she was 12, and then me when she was 16. So her story was different. So how she journeyed in life put her on a path that didn't necessarily make her mindful about some of the decisions she was making, and so she did not know who my father was. And so I was blessed, though, to have men that stepped up, some that were connected to her through relationships, but a lot of men that had nothing to do with my mom as it relates to relational. And so I titled all these men as a bonus in my life.
Wow.
Because they added to me. And so, but they also had their own biological children. And so that to me was, it made me even more grateful, because I said they didn't have to. They're not biologically connected.
So does that mean that they saw something in you and wanted to be a part of that?
That's what I felt, and so I felt special.
Okay.
Their ability, and not only them, but the wives some of them had, the girlfriends that some of them had, and then their children who decided to embrace me. Okay. But it all had to do with how he introduced me. And so that was something that made me extremely grateful. So I was able to get exposure to men who were tapped into their families.
So I'm gonna add some pieces. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So what it sounds like, from my perspective, I was raised in the foster care system too, so I know what that being alone and not. It's slightly different for young men or boys growing up, but there's a common theme there, and I'm assessing that by listening to your story. We all want families. We all want to belong to a family.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm detecting, and as I hear your story, there was a need for family.
That's right.
A desire for family. And there were some people who were willing to answer that call. Is
That's
that what
right.
I heard?
That's
okay.
it.
Okay.
That's
good.
it.
Good. Well,
That's
go
right.
ahead. Cause
and the fact that I knew it was clear they decided to. And they didn't have much. A lot of them didn't have much, but they still made room for me. And so whether that room was just to pick me up to take me to church and then paid for me to eat afterwards, right? Or whether that was inviting me into their holiday experiences, whatever that was, that was something that, because my mom and I, it was just she and I, sometimes we didn't have a place to live. A lot of times we were homeless. We stayed at a lot of women's shelters, safe houses and stuff like that. So we didn't have those spaces, but when people made room for us or for me, it gave me exposure. And when it gave me exposure, that gave me a sense of gratitude, which then made me look through different lenses as I journeyed. So I looked at men differently.
So that piques another question for me. Simplistic, and it's obvious, but I'm asking this question for the unobvious person. How come you didn't become bitter by some of that stuff?
Well, okay, so that's an amazing question, because not everybody that well, let me back up. Not every man that had that opportunity to actually bring me in or seize that
into you, yeah.
sewed into me. So my mom did have boyfriends that did not, and there was one particular boyfriend that I highlight in the book because he impacted me so much to where it really could have blocked me from trusting or wanting to even be around another man.
Okay.
And that experience lasted a long time with him, years with him, and how he engaged with women, and in addition to my mom and myself. And what I was able to do is I saw that he was never mean to me. He actually had more conversations with me than my mom. And so my mom, oftentimes, I missed a lot of school, so I didn't learn how to read until I was in 4th grade. But and I was blessed by a teacher that threatened to call CPS and take me away if my mom didn't have me at school. But he would have conversations with me. So a lot of times my mom would ask me to stay home when he was angry so that I can calm him down. So, but in my conversations with him, even though he was what he was in their relationship, I did realize that he had his own trauma, and I learned how, through listening and conversing with him, that there was something there, but his actions still made me angry because there was a side of him that I did like, and I saw that he was trying. But then when I saw that he didn't stay true to that made me not. That made me bitter. It made me distrusting of they could say this and they could, but then in 2 seconds this could happen. So then I started giving all men the side eye. And I was like, okay, you can't be trusted. Even men that never gave me that experience. And so I would just watch, and if they showed that to me, I would say, okay, they can't be trusted. But I had a desire to, like, and a longing, like you said before, to want that part of the family. I wanted that. So I was challenged a lot from a perspective of, I don't really trust them, but they seem to be nice. I kind of like that part. So the more I had an opportunity to see guys, and they never actually switched. Then I saw another man like that, and then that restored it, because I do believe after that long experience, it was some years, if it probably would have took only one more man doing it, and I may have.
But see, here's the thing that's impressive to me. You at a young age, you learned how to juggle, right? And you could have let the juggling tempt you, and just by God's grace, you didn't. I gotta count that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't, and then you didn't stow away. You didn't lock into it and just held on to it, right? And maybe you did for a little while, because it sounds like you were saying I kind of did, but I didn't go all the way that way, right?
Right.
And so first of all, I'm in awe. I'm in awe of how you were able to navigate those waters. Okay, that takes a very special person. Well, let me reframe that. That takes a person of Christ,
Right. That's right.
to
That's
be
right.
able to
That's right.
navigate those waters and not come out shaved or whatever. Okay, so that's not a lot of conversation we're able to have at a podcast often. Okay?
Right.
I'm thinking anyway. All right. So I appreciate that. So once you were able to get past that hurdle, tell me what was lined up next for you.
Well, so I think what's important to highlight is that I think hurdles are like hurdles. There's another one, right? And another one that you got to jump over. And so it was just in different experiences. So as I learned that, okay, not all men may say one thing and do another when it relates to like your home and your safety and security and that kind of thing. But is that true in a relationship? So I had never seen a healthy relationship with a man and a woman, right? So, okay, they're nice as a father figure, but when you get into a relationship, are they really? So that was another hurdle,
Okay,
right?
got you.
So I was blessed to be able to have exposure to different marriages and have front line seat. And I knew, okay, God, you're trying to set me up. But I didn't know how quickly he was going to do that. So my husband and I will be married 23 years in March.
Okay.
Which to me, when he asked me, which was surprising, I actually said, because I'm very direct and transparent, I said, I don't even know what a wife should be. Because I said, so if you could give me some time, and based on what you told me, because we were friends, and I just brought that up, based on what you told me, I don't think you know what a husband should be like either. And I said, but it's all good. We could just look at the word. We could get counseling. We could figure it out. And so that's what we did. We had premarital counseling. We watched. Of course, I had godparents and I had other people around me that had marriages. But because my focus had shifted, I started leaning more in. What are they doing? That type of thing. So that was a different hurdle because even though I was blessed to have father figures, now I have to see how do I interact in this way.
Husband
right?
figure, right?
And then in corporate America, with leaders, authority, because of my mom and my relationship where she had me at 16, and then she had a battle with alcoholism was her deal, and she had drug addictions and a lot of stuff like that, but alcohol was her. That was the struggle that she had.
Okay. Hold on, I want to do something. I want to make sure that I get this book up again, right? So I need you to be able to look at this as Intentional Dads by Fashé Halley. I want you to really take a look at this. You can find it on, where can you find this book at? Amazon,
Target, Barnes & Noble, at Art Noir if you are in the Central District. And that's off of 23rd and Union.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go. Okay. And nationally, you can find it Amazon. And
yes,
stuff.
and anywhere books are sold because it's all connected.
Okay. I want to make sure that I don't usually do that, but I want to put a bid in because if anybody happens to listen to this podcast, I found it very interesting. And so we're going to just pick back up with the interview. I want to make sure that they get their teeth cut on some of this. Okay?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So I'm trying to remember where we were.
You're talking about your marriage. And
yes. Okay. So that was a hurdle. And so once I got that, it then was in the professional world, right? So that was it was authority. Because I was saying my mom and I had role reversal a lot because of some of the things she struggled with. And when I say role reversal, it's called parentification, where the child then becomes the parent. And so anytime our welfare check came in, once she cashed it, I got the money, I got the food stamps because she knew if we wanted everything to stay on, she should give it to me. Even when some of her friends from the streets came, they gave me their money. But then I also knew my mom was no joke. Okay, so there was no disrespecting going on there either. So I was trying to navigate some of the things where respect was an authority. I was struggling with how do I see the authority and listen to them directionally.
So let me revisit that. So
Okay.
so your mother is a person who's giving you the ability to manage money,
Right.
but you couldn't disrespect her in managing her money.
You know it.
Is
That's
that right?
it. That's right. You spot on.
I want to make sure I understand this, right?
You're
'Cause
right
somebody
on.
might miss this,
That's
right?
right.
So that
That's
means
right.
you got to be appealing, and what's the word I'm looking for? And kind of standoffish at the same time,
At the
right?
same time, yes.
Tell
yeah.
me how that works.
Well, you just have to, honestly, you have to observe. And I had to see what space she was in.
Mm-hmm.
And so what space, is it a space where she was open to me kind of sharing some things and then trying to figure out how do I share things in a respectful way when something was out of order.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That, I mean, what was your age range in navigating these waters?
So, I did that. I don't remember a time I didn't do that. I don't.
Wow.
Yeah. So my mom. I even started writing resumes for her. She would say, I need to get a job, go to school, learn how to write a resume, and then write it for me. And then so that was just our relationship. So when I got into corporate America, relating to women, I understood, right? Because I had a lot of, right?
Yeah.
Well, then men, that was a whole different dynamic because I had to figure out how to navigate with that authority. That's another hurdle, going back to that example that you shared earlier. But what I had learned about myself by that time is that if I just, if I could realize that it was an opportunity that was given to me to learn, I was capable of learning. So all I had to do, and I already knew how to observe because I looked at people. Because if things were about to pop off back in the day,
no
you got to go. You got to go.
Yeah.
Or if things had to shift, so I knew that was a strong, a key strength I had. So I knew how to exercise that, but it was just a matter of, okay, so now how do I process in this environment?
See, so I'm imagining you're this small, petite thing that's got wisdom way beyond your tenor, right? But all you had to do was just watch, right?
Right.
Just watch and be mindful of, right?
Exactly.
And it just gave you, I could see that I have a 14-year-old daughter at home. She's my 8th child, right? And she is the smoothest thing I ever seen. I mean, she knows how to navigate waters.
Yes.
She's got her own little money, and she does her own hair. Sits in and put the thing and just braids her own hair and does it. I mean, been doing this for a year and a half now, right? So I'm saying that when you give a young person the ability to do something and navigate something, they kind of figured it out a little bit.
Right.
I haven't gave her all the confidence with these young men yet. Though.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Exactly.
Don't do it.
But this conversation with you is giving me a real sense of guidance and direction because I see that this has not been an easy road for you. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think for is your concern, how do I utilize this? And so that's gonna be kind of my question. How do we make this be beneficial?
So what's amazing about that whole where you were going as far as your daughter and her being able to really get exposure and then practice, right? Because whether she's doing her hair or her finance, she has decided, she made a decision. She invested in that decision by observing, by investing her time or whatever. And then she decided, let me put this into practice, right? And so I'm sure she messed up on a lot of braids,
No question.
right?
No question. And she paid for it.
Right,
so.
right. And she did. But then she was like, okay, I can keep doing this because what's the harm? What's the alternative? Me paying somebody, right? And then I won't learn.
Right.
So that same concept I feel is applicable to anybody. I feel like just we give ourselves an opportunity to really embrace the exposure and experience that we have and say, all right, so what am I supposed to do with this, right? Not assess the feelings and the impacts and things of that nature. But what do I desire to do with this? What's going to serve me well? So I would say I got saved here at Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church in '96, and I would say it would be 10 to 15 years before I knew God as my Father. So I had been in church a long time, and I knew Him as my Lord and Savior. But it was I can't recall how it was moving, and He was operating as my Lord and Savior, coming through all the time for them. And then I read, I'm a father to the fatherless. I said, oh, okay. And so around that time, people were talking about, I have a lot of friends that say, oh, and male friends as well, oh, she has daddy issues. Or women would say, oh, I have daddy issues. So, this is why I did. And I was like, oh, I can't empathize. And it wasn't anything negative. I wasn't trying to say that because the details they were sharing with me. And they were like, oh, I thought you don't know who your father is. I said, you're right, but I have bonus dads. And so.
You weren't claiming the problem.
No, but I wasn't trying to say I was above. And I know sometimes people will challenge you. Oh, Fashay, you take off those rose-colored glasses. And sometimes I'll challenge people. What's the alternative?
So that then brings me back to kind of the original question. And I'll just lay it out there. So tell me your fathering story. Oh. Tell me your fathering story. Yeah. And you've given us a lot of context, but
right.
Let's go a little bit underneath that.
So not knowing, again, I'll get to the Lord being my father, but I originally thought my birth father was, his name was Tommy Rain. He's in the book as well. So all of my bonus dads are in the book. I thought he was my father. My name originally Fashay Rain. Well, my mom she's always been very transparent. So she was like, I don't really want kids like that because of having my brother when she was 12 and him being, I wouldn't say he was taken away. He was actually, she asked family to help her with. So when she had me, she said, well, if you want her to my dad at my first bonus dad, you take her. And so he was 17 and he took me back with his family, and I stayed with him and his family for 2 years, and is what they share with me. And then my mom he then decided to get married, and she was like, you're not making a family with my child. So then she came and got me. But long story short, as it relates to that dynamic, she caused hell, can I say that, with him and his new wife and their children. And I, of course, grew older, and I saw it. I was like, oh, Lord, there's drama now again. And she would say, and she's not even your daughter anyway. And I was like, well, why is she would throw that jab at him, right. But I would be listening because I pay attention.
You're the one actually getting the hit, though, right?
Right. And I was like, what is she saying? And so then I learned that he was not my biological father. They had a blood test. He wasn't. And so eventually, as time would go by, he also battled with heroin. He was addiction. Heroin addiction, yes. And so, but even through that battle, he would take the bus from like West Seattle. We lived in Lake City at the time, and we would talk. He would call me, and I would say, I have a new school picture for you, and he would take the bus and all the way to Lake City to get the school picture. Wow. Now understand, I knew he had his whole family, but he was like, I thought I was special because I knew he was coming. Amen. And he showed up. And he was my Tommy was very jovial, very joyful. Even in the midst of drama, he would have a joke, right, to kind of diffuse the situation. So he came in. This particular time he came in and he said, he was like, "Oh, Shay, real excited." I think my mom, in looking at our relationship, and she later would tell me, I think she envied that because she didn't have that. So when she would see it, I think she would desire it for me, but she did not like it when it was in her presence. So she would then pick at him.
Sabotage.
Right, absolutely. So I got his picture. I wrote my name on the back and my grade. And then I had to go. I wanted to show him something else. I came back out. Now, she was yelling, but that was normal. I didn't think she was about to put him out that quick because she wasn't going to put him out. I always knew she was going to put him out, okay? And so she put him out, but then my picture that I had given him was on the counter. And I said, why is my picture here? This is for my dad. And she was like, he's not your dad. And I said, he is. And she was like, he's not. So I went and ran after him. He was at the bus stop.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I thought I was 12, about 12. And I thought I was about to have a adult conversation because, again, dealing with adults in the way that I had to, I thought I was in a position to do that, but not I was never disrespectful.
Yeah.
So I just said, he was very like, oh, your mom, real upbeat. And I said, Dad, why do you keep coming out here when we both know I'm not your daughter? And he looked at me, he said, you are my daughter. And I said, oh, Dad, that's you don't have to pretend. I know I'm not your daughter. And he looked at me, and I will never forget his eyes. He had tears in his eyes, and he said, you are my daughter. And when he did that, he said, I don't ever want to talk to you about this again. And so.
Wow.
And so.
Let's take a minute. That's pretty tough for me. So take a minute, okay? Go ahead.
All right. So we're at the bus stop, and I ask him, and he then tells me, I'm your father. And the last time he said that twice, and then he said, and I don't want to ever have this conversation again. Now, because I saw his eyes, I knew that I don't think I had ever, honestly, at that time, ever saw any kind of emotion in a man's eyes like that. And so it really, my heart felt what he was saying. And so, and I just said, yes, sir. And I said, okay. And then he went back talking like normal. He got the picture. He was like, oh, yeah, your mama, and I'll be back. She going to put me out again. And so then we just moved right along. And so that set the foundation of my fathering story, because I didn't know. I was very clear that I didn't know who it was, and my mom didn't either. But because that's who I was, that was the first man that loved me. And then I was clear. He made it clear that he loved me, and I was a part of him. And he wanted me to have his last name. He didn't care about what my mom thought, and he was willing to deal with whatever she was dishing out because he was fine with it for me.
So the question that I have, so did you ever see him again?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So we never stopped being connected.
Okay.
Right. So even my little brother and my little sister, his family with his other wife, we were close when we were younger. But then some drama with my mother stopped me from going over as frequently. Now the funny part, just real quick snippet, I'm at Garfield High School. My junior year, I was on the cheer squad in softball. My brother, Tommy Jr. came, and he was on the football team. Now, we hadn't talked to each other in years, and so people were like, hey, is your little brother Tommy? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's my little brother, right? And so then people would say, is that your sister? He would say, no. So one day I said, he said, what? And so I went up to him in the hallway, and I said, hey, now we haven't spoken in years. I said, why you keep telling people I'm not your sister? He was like, I was like, stop doing that. And I just said, I don't know what, my mom's crazy, and our dad is not too wrapped too tight either. Right now. I was like, and so why does that have to be between me and you? He was like, okay. And so we've been best friends ever since. He went, of course, it may have had to do with I had a car and stuff like that. And no, I'm just messing around. But we are still, to this day, best friends. So I actually, my bonus dad, Tommy, passed away 3 years ago. But I came up every year because he had diabetes, and he started having amputation. So I would come up, and I would make sure that he was comfortable, and then decorate his spot because he because he was sometimes very minimalist, and I wanted it to be comfortable for him. So, and so we never talked about him not being my father.
Amen.
And so, except for one day he brought it up, but it was in a funny way. We were right up here at Harborview, and he was like, man, I still cannot believe that you're not my daughter, because every time we want to go eat, we like the same things and all that. He was like, I think the blood test was a lie. I just have always thought that. And that was the only time that it came back up. And so actually this book was birthed from him. So when I came up to do the homegoing service and celebration of life with my bonus siblings to help spearhead that, I just, at the time, God gave me a gratitude for him, because even his joyful personality, I felt like I saw that and I got that from him. And so I was able to see through lenses like he saw, and I only knew what that looked like because he demonstrated that. And so so I was like, man, I want to do something just to say thank you to all my bonus dads. And so
that literally spurned that desire in you.
It did,
right? That's amazing, because there are situations. I'll give you an example. My wife and I go through this. My wife was raised by her single father, who literally took her from her mother at an early age and drove to Seattle, Washington from Los Angeles. I was adopted away from my family and was at 1 year old adopted by another family, right? And I was raised in that one family until I was 10 years old, and then put in another family. But there was another family that came into my life when I was 16 years old. And my mother just turned 86 years old in last August, right? And I have a whole lot of her characteristics. So I understand what that means, right? She had 2 other sons. I'm her oldest, right? Not her biological, but I'm her oldest, right? Yeah. And if you look us in a room, we all look alike. We all, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So those dynamics are rare.
Right.
But there are people who will weigh you down with telling you what you ain't, right?
That's right.
But as long as you know what it is.
As long as you know that, then yes. And it's easy to operate in that. And so I'll go over real quick to the spiritual connection, because when I wanted to, once I came up for his homegoing, and I kind of felt odd because, of course it's emotionally draining, planning everything and life insurance, all that stuff and everything with laying someone to rest. There were moments where it was like I had these joyful moments where I was like, I was going to the U District for something, and I drove across Montlake Bridge, and I would just say, man, I remember my dad put me on his motorcycle and from Lake City to come here, and it was like, he was so funny, and so I felt joyful moments in the midst of grief, right? So what I had learned before when my mom passed was that if I embrace those moments of sadness and then I embrace those moments of joy and laugh, it got me to the peace I needed when I needed to have that peace, and it was okay to have those cycles. And so that's when I started. I knew that God had me think about all of my bonus dads. I was like, man. And then I started going back. I would not say up until that point that I really realized, man, Lord, and then this father, and this. Oh my gosh, I've been blessed. But I said, Lord, you blessed me with so many bonus dads. So I went back to, I wanted to go back really quickly to say that, again, even though I got saved in 96, I didn't know God to be my father until I actually read it. And I said, I almost think it's more like, okay, Lord, well, let me see if you'll do this, right? And so And then I said at the time that sometimes people would say, "Hey, Shay, you know, I know you don't know who your father is, so do you have any daddy issues?" And I said, "No, I don't. I don't feel that." And it was authentic. Now, what I have learned is that I don't have to prove anything to anybody. Right. That's my experience. Right. And so, but if you're asking for my perspective, that's all I have. Right, is my experience. So some would challenge me and say, "Well, Shay, don't you want to know what your eyes look like?" I would love to see my father. I told you, I was talking to some of your leaders, and I had a funny story about walking up my bus stop was right here on Jefferson, and I lived on 15th and Jefferson, and there used to be an Ethiopian store right over here, right? Yep. And so there used to be a car that followed me. From Jefferson all the way to 15th, and I told my mom, who I said already wasn't wrapped too tight. So, so she had hid in a bush one day because I told her, I said, "Mom, there's a white truck," and she hid in a bush, and she didn't tell me this was her plan. So the truck came down our street, and she went chasing after the truck and so then she went down to the Ethiopian store and went off on everybody and said she was going to blow the place up if the truck came following me. And so the funny part to that is even what I experienced today at the MLK walk. I went to Garfield and a lady stopped me and said, "Oh, hey, Ethiopian sister." And I said, hey, I said, "But I'm not Ethiopian." She said, "What are you?" "I am a black woman from Seattle, Washington." I didn't. She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Yes." She said, What's your name?" As if you don't know who you are. So why the story links up is I used to mess with my mom because Ethiopians and Somalians would always come up and she would say, She's not Ethiopian. She's not Somalian." And I was telling Mom, calm down, and she was like, "Oh, no, I don't like." But then I laughed. I said, "Mom, you can tell me the truth. That man that was following me in that truck, was that my dad?" Or but it's funny because just knowing even that I could be walking past anybody and that could really be my dad, right?
But you kind of canceled that. I guess in a perspective, I can say that is when you said, "Well, I have a father," right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a father, right?
When people ask that, I said, "Okay, I'm curious." But then even when they asked me characteristics, I think when I saw that, I said, "All right, Lord, I don't know who my father is and his characteristics, but I know yours."
So I'm going to say this to you. What I before we get off this cast today, I want to do something that worked for me. A number of years ago, I was on drugs and I was having children out of wedlock. And I found myself in front of the hospital getting ready to leave my 7th child on the steps. And I did. And she wound up in the CPS, Child Protective Agency. In fact, all my children did, except for my 8th child. And I prayed a prayer, "Lord, help me put my family back together again." But I was just talking about my wife, who became my wife at that time, and the children that we were bringing home. And God did that, right? But I had no idea. See, the Lord always goes above and beyond anything you can even imagine or think, right? So I didn't know that he was going to bring me a mother and a father.
Yes.
And then that we were going to be united together. But I've never forgot what he's done, right? And so I tell everybody all the time, well, one of the things you can't beat me doing, and that's believing.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
You can't beat me believing because I believe he is who he say he is.
That's right.
And he'll do what he says he'll do, right? So with that, I'm gonna carry that on my shoulder, and my word to speak to you is that God's got an answer for you. He's got an answer for you. And it's going to be a live and living and visual answer, okay?
I receive it.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Because I think really he doesn't want to see any of his children in dismay or despair.
Absolutely.
Okay? Right? And if he can, it's funny, I say this to you, but in about the last 6 months, I've probably run across 3 sons who are getting connected to their fathers. Okay, one of them is a young man I married 18 years ago, 19 years ago, and 3 months ago he said, "Man, I heard from my father. My father's on his way here." Right? He said, "Man, I don't know how to take this. I don't know what to do with this." Right? So I'm walking him through this process right now. Because everybody wants to know who their father is, but what they don't understand is what that looks like on their end, right? I met my mom. I didn't know what that looked like on that end. And I assessed that everybody's going to have some kind of dismay. But that's not what you're asking for. You're just asking for the connection. That, for you. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know, so you know what it is, right?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And if you don't put any more on God than that, he'll do that, right?
Absolutely.
And then you just give him the ability to do the rest. So listen, I know we have had a chance to talk. What I want to do is maybe try to cover one more thing on this, and then I want to leave an opportunity for you and I to do this a few more times, even if we have to do them long distance, okay?
Absolutely.
All right?
Absolutely.
I think your story is at the very beginning stages, and so I'd like to be able to walk with you through that, right?
Absolutely.
Not that I'm anybody special. I just happen to know fatherhood, okay? All right?
Absolutely.
So let me just say this. We talked about your bonus dad. We talked about your first bonus dad.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that was a unique story. And I would just ask you, you talked about your mother, you know what I'm saying? And that to me, that was pretty courageous, okay? A lot of folks wouldn't have had the ability to talk about their mother to the degree that you did. I don't think you said anything bad or wrong, right? But you talked about a pretty substantial piece of your mother's life. That's pretty brave of you. What I'll ask you now, any siblings, and what are your relationship with your sibling?
So the son my mom was pregnant with when she was pregnant with him at 12. I think she had him right when she turned 13 though. Okay. So he of course since he was adopted by her brother, he was raised as my cousin, but he knows so that now I will say that he grew up different than me a lot. He had a lot of resources, a lot of love, a lot of support, that type of thing. But because he had a perception that I was with my mom and he wasn't, there was some disconnect between us anytime I would go and visit. Now, the great thing was when he was about 22, we had an opportunity to sit down and talk about that. So my mom was unapologetically very transparent. She probably would have told you everything I said and more. But so when it was good for me to have a conversation with him without her, because there was some disconnects between them two. They hadn't healed and mended. So I was able to share with him, and I felt like he was grateful to understand, because I think he had a narrative that he had made up. Right?
Most children do.
Absolutely.
Right?
So he thought I had this life. Well, he didn't know we were homeless. He didn't know we slept under the stairs in some secure buildings. He didn't know that she would drop me off different places, not where he was, because she felt like that would be more permanent, and she needed me, she said. So to help her, but he didn't know why she needed me. He thought she needed me because she loved me more. But he didn't know that I was caring for her. And so
you were the caregiver,
right?
He was thinking,
yes,
she was the caregiver.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
So then that gave him clarity, but he was transparent because that damaged his relationship with women as well, right? So, but he was transparent in the fact that now that he had that was not what he thought. So how does he atone for what he did? So that was a struggle, and I think he still struggles with that. My bonus siblings, now I have the 9 bonus dads, right? So every bonus sibling I have from them, so I am very clear in here that I'm not claiming that any of my bonus dads were perfect. They were just perfect for me. So I know some of them have kids they don't even have relationships with. And even coming here to Seattle, some had reached out and they have their own stories that don't align with gratitude. So it's hard for them to see that that is my experience, but it's a blessing because they're wanting to understand it more.
And I was going to say, if I might add this piece, you got to meet them where they are.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And even offer the opportunity to walk through them through whatever that is.
And
because you're advanced.
Well, that's the blessing with each of them that have wanted to talk about it, because I feel like that's what they want. And that's awesome, because I want to give that in any way I can. So the other piece you had said, what's one other thing I would share about this? The one other thing I would also share is that I spent about 2.5 years interviewing men about fatherhood. And God told me, Shay, I want you to capture demographics because I need to show you something. So I was like, okay, what does that mean? So he had me write down with each interview. I had the standard demographics, which was, their age, their race, their ethnicity, in place of birth of origin, because not every man that I interviewed was from the United States. Their family dynamic, how many kids they had, what were biological, what were bonus, what was their relationship status? Were they widow? Were they, married? Were they single? What was their faith affiliation? Were they agnostic, Christian, Muslim, atheist, etc.? And God gave me 12 questions to ask men. And the last question was the most important, which was, do you see God as a father figure? But he told me to put that as the last question. All of the other questions dealt with what do you find, how would you define present, right? Is that and present and available, right? Physically, emotionally, mentally. And where do you think you struggle with? What scares you about fatherhood? What brings you joy? Do you have any relationship goals for you and your children? Was your father around? How did that help you or hinder you? If you were to talk to other men about fatherhood, what would you share with them that you would have want to be shared with you? And then I paused, and I just was curious. Hey, do you guys share stuff like this? Because a lot of the insight they shared, I was like, man, I know men that would, even close to me and close to my husband, that would love that information and insight. And I asked, well, do you share this? And a lot of men that I interview say, well, no, we don't really talk about that kind of stuff, Shay, when we get together. And I asked why. And they said, well, when we get together, we just, it's a lot of weight on us.
Well, see, okay. I'm going to just a little
Go
pushback.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay. We don't have these kind of conversations because we're not accustomed to having these conversations.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But once you get a group of men accustomed to having these conversations, and these conversations start answering questions, whether they're negative or positive, they start answering questions.
Yes.
Then you become accustomed for these questions to be answered,
Yes.
right? And depending on what group or pod you're in, we teach a class here. I know the fellas told you about a class we teach. Well, in these classes, we have 14 to 15 men.
Yes.
And they're 13-week classes. Now, you might ask each one of these questions at the very beginning of the class, but 14 weeks later, when you ask these questions, it's a different dynamic, because what has the major question that comes up in these classes is, I thought I was all by myself.
Yes.
Most men think they are.
And so I completely agree with you're saying, because what I learned about your classes is that it gives them exposure they didn't have, and then it gives them experience. So once I have exposure and experience, then I have a different perspective about what the experience looks like. So I don't mind doing it. So a lot of men that I interview, I don't feel like they had that. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
so that's why they were like, hey, this is how I would define it.
Exactly.
And then even asking questions like, when I said, finish this statement, when my children speak of me, this is what I would say. When my children speak of me, I would like them to say that I'm blank kind of dad. Please share the characteristics and attributes. And so, and I share it from a perspective, because your kids will speak with about you to their friends as part of your legacy in different places. So they gave perspective, and I asked, how do women help you and how do we hinder you? in your fatherhood experience. And that was helpful for me. And I knew immediately it would be helpful for other women because I was married 19 years when I started interviewing. And I would say after like processing, I said, I definitely feel like I listen differently to my husband and my son and any man, because I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what they're sharing. And so it's like, so they helped me write a whole nother chapter because I thought I was done. I told you a lot of times I thought I was done with the book. And then when they shared, hey, Shay, here's what mask some of us wear sometimes, and here's what we're trying to do. We are trying to figure out how to work with our vulnerability and without feeling like it's weakness. And we're trying to work through that. And here's how it impacts our relationship with women. And here's how. So all of that, I would say, helped me. I believe that it was definitely, when I started it, it was like, hey, there are a lot of men that have experiences, and they may not ever experience like the session you have or the courses you guys offer. But if there's a way to connect the insight that these men are sharing, that they so willingly shared to other men, how do I capture that?
So that's a great question, and I'm going to let that be our closing question. Okay. So I am writing my second book now, probably in the 4th chapter. 12, it's laid out to be wrapped up by May, So I'm in a process of writing this. Now, I'm much farther along than where I was 5 years ago. But what I'm basing that on, this writing now, is on my experiences, right? Yeah. The first was to tell my past and present at that time. And what I was able to do was talk about some of my experiences, right? Well, the experiences now is much more inclusive to family, to children, to community, to some of our data points from what some of the folks who've come through our program and what their responses have been to some of the attributes they've been able to walk away from and apply to their. So it encompasses a lot of things. But when I first told this first story, it was just based on what you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm here to say that yours will be the exact same way. You will be able to talk about some desires and experience you have, but when you get ready to tell this again, you're going to talk about the outcome of your experiences.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And that is truly what people want to know.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
How did this work for you? Well, how will it work for me?
Yes, yes.
People, we live in a self-help, get you some help society nowadays, right? And we don't need to go to Harvard University to get the help, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And I love that, because really it just reminds us that to do life together. Amen. Because I don't have everything is. I definitely think that people should leverage the resources with counseling or whoever, but there are also, there's a
practical stuff.
Yeah, just like a sounding board network, just to say, hey, this is what I'm about to say. Should I say it?
Yes.
And then you, from your expertise, okay, now that I have this, no, you shouldn't. Like some of the men I interviewed, 70s, and they were like, hey, Shay, here's what my experience. Yeah, here's what was made me fearful initially, but now that I have this is what I'm experiencing, and this is what I would share with a man. Amen. But that, coming back to what you're saying, it's all about what was your exposure and experience, and then can we talk about it? And it's not one time; it's each season.
Yes. So Shay, listen, I am thrilled to death about this podcast we just done.
Yes,
I'm excited to see what's going to take place. Again, I want to make sure that we promote this book again, right? Intentional Dads. I think that's a proper name. And I want you to do whatever you can to make sure you get a copy of this. Show that back up again, would you please? Intentional Dads. I think this is a bestseller. And so you guys should do everything in your power to get a copy of this. And then I want to make sure that you get a chance to come back this way. Anytime you're in the neighborhood,
absolutely.
stop by and let's see what we can come up with, okay?
Absolutely. And if you have any questions, we have Intentional Dads Facebook. We have Intentional Dads IG. You can ask questions. We'll start to, in February, I'm looking to do a what I'm calling right now Book Club Live, which is really to discuss books live and get feedback and go over things, because what I've learned is that people will have something, and then because they aren't challenged to really process through discussion, we kind of just keep it to the side. We don't know how to apply. So I figure, hey, well, let's just talk about it. And if you want to get on, awesome. If you don't, you miss it, it's all good. We'll be back whenever we tell you we're going to be back.
Amen. Well, I'm sure that people will take advantage of every opportunity that you got.
Yep.
And if we can, we'll help that as well.
Awesome.
I'm knee deep in doing everything. I never expected an organization to grow out of what we were doing, but it has, and so I'm all over the place. But I do cherish my friends,
yes,
new and old,
yes,
and I want to make sure that if we could be of any plus at all, that we're at your beck and disposal. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much.
I am glad that I had this opportunity. Irie, we appreciate you and the help that you've given us. This was a spur of the moment. We just got her into the door today, and she leaves town tomorrow. But I feel so honored that I had a chance to have you on the air.
Oh, I'm excited. I feel honored.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you again.